Good evening and welcome to the Theology Zone. I'm actually doing a Sunday school class. I actually had taught a Sunday school class on the subject God is Wise some weeks back, but the problem is that the audio didn't record properly. So I'm right here at home and I'm going to redo that particular Sunday school class. So for those that get to watch this when I post it publicly, my name is Johnny Navarro, and I am a member of Acts Reformed Church in West Covina, California. So if you're ever interested in coming to our church and visiting us, we welcome you to Acts Reformed Church. The Sunday schools normally start at 9:45 a.m., which we usually live stream on the Theology Zone Facebook page, and then later we upload it to the Theology Zone YouTube channel. But of course, this is a makeup Sunday school that I'm doing today from home. So that protocol won't happen this time. Our worship services at Acts Reformed Church, the corporate worship begins at 10:30 a.m., which we live stream on the Acts Reformed Church Facebook page later to be uploaded to the Acts Reformed Church YouTube channel. So we do invite you to come and visit us. We are a Bible believing church. We believe in the inspiration, infallibility, and inerrancy of the scriptures. We are a Reformed Baptist church, so we hold to the Second London Baptist Confession of Faith 1689. So if you'd like to know more about it, you can also go to our website, which is acts1689.org. And so if you want to know more about us, our elder's name is Gerardo Cisneros, and we're a very small church. And so if you ever come and visit us, or if you want to contact us on either Facebook, you can call us. You can also contact us on X, which used to be called Twitter, at Acts1689, at Acts, ACTS 1689. If you want to reach us there, or on Facebook at Acts Reformed Church, you can contact any of us. We're also on Instagram, also at ACTS 1689. And if you want to reach out to us, find out a little bit more about us, maybe you don't know how to get there or something like that. So if you have any questions, you can reach us that way, and you can come join us. And we'd love to have you. Now, I'm usually the one that teaches the Sunday schools, but there's other brother James Aleman, and obviously, I'm also the host of the co-host of Christian Thought in Our World, which is a separate YouTube channel that I do. And I wanted to let people know that I've also created another YouTube channel. Now, the one that I'm using right now is called The Theology Zone, and you can follow me on X at The Theology Zone right there, which is formerly Twitter. But I've created one because I've had people requesting that I actually do this kind of content in Spanish. And so I had thought about maybe doing Spanish ones and putting them here on the Theology Zone, but I figured maybe it'd be easier if I create another YouTube channel and call it La Zona Teologica. So it's the same name, the Theology Zone, but just in Spanish. I do have one. I will actually leave the link to that YouTube channel in the description of this video on YouTube. So if you want to check that out, what I have is one video that I had actually done. It was actually originally it was an audio recording, and this audio recording was on the subject of original sin, and I had done it with a gentleman by the name of Alfonso, which was a friend of the family since before I was born. I have not seen him in many years. His name was Alfonso, and we did a whole thing in Spanish called El Pecado Original, Original Sin. And so we did this whole recording, and then what I basically did was I took that MP3 and added a montage of pictures of myself in earlier years. So that video is now available on La Zona Teologica if anyone wants to check it out. And then what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start doing a series on specific topics. I do want to do things like the attributes of God. I want to do this in Spanish. Also, in addition to that, I would like to cover the catechism questions as we have already done at Acts Reformed Church in the Sunday schools. We actually have covered the entire Young Baptist Catechism. So right now, as I'm covering the attributes of God, once we're done with that, I'm going to be doing a study on the 5 points of Calvinism. And after that, we'll probably cover the Apostles' Creed, or we'll brainstorm and see how everything grows from that. So with that introduction, And just to catch up for everybody there. Uh, you can join us at Acts Reformed Church at 3528 East Temple Way, West Covina, California. Every Sunday we do what is called the Sunday School Prayer, which is the Great Shema. Usually I'll have it displayed on the screen, but I don't have the digital screen here, so bear with me and just hear the words, right? Okay, so the Sunday School Prayer is the Great Shema, which is a Hebrew prayer that is done every day by Jews, and is Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh Echad. Okay, so let's say it again. Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh Echad. Okay, which means in English, hear, O Israel, Yahweh our God, Yahweh is one. And what we're basically saying to the world and to God is that we are committed and covenanted to the one God of Israel, to the one God, Yahweh, our almighty supreme being, creator, holy God, which is what we're covering in the attributes of God. So we're saying this God that we're describing with these attributes, we are covenanted to that one and only God. And all other gods are not really God in the sense that God is with a capital G. So the attribute of God that we're covering is God is wise. So let's ask the question, what is wisdom? Wisdom, he hukma, Greek sophia phronimos, is also translated wise in the New Testament, is a kind of heightened knowledge, a knowledge that penetrates to deep significance and practical relevance. We are someone's we are sometimes encouraged to think of wisdom as knowledge put into practice, but knowledge itself can also be practical and wisdom can be theoretical. So there's an aspect of it. Wisdom and knowledge are not the same thing, but they can be used interchangeably in certain contexts. But let's talk here about now this is a quotation from the Doctrine of God from John Frame's book, which I highly recommend. Next quote is, in the wisdom literature, the word often refers to a mere humanly derived knowledge, Ecclesiastes 1:13, which brings only grief and frustrations, Ecclesiastes 2:9 through 11. In contrast with this human wisdom, however, there is a divine wisdom given by God that enables humans to lead a good and true and satisfying life. Such divine wisdom keeps the commandments of God, Proverbs 4:11, is characterized by prudence, Proverbs 8:12, discernment, Proverbs 14:8, and humility, Proverbs 10:8, and is based on the fear of the Lord, Job 28:12 through 28. Only God, of course, possesses this wisdom in the absolute sense, Job 12:13. It cannot be derived by human intelligence, Job 28:12 through 13. I know if I'm going too fast, remember this is a recording, so you can pause it, you can rewind, you can take notes. So this is the great thing about you know doing live streaming and watching these videos, is that you can pause and rewind. So don't be intimidated if I'm going too fast. Some people are very good, they can roll with it, but other people may struggle with the how fast things go. Okay, Job 28:12-13, Ecclesiastes 7:23. The scoffer will never find it, Proverbs 14:6. But God, whose attribute it is, 1 Kings 3:28, Daniel 2:20, freely gives it to those who seek it, Proverbs 2:6, Ecclesiastes 2:26. This is from the Evangelical Dictionary of Theology by Walter Elwell, another book that I highly recommend. Got a lot of great information. But here comes the issue that comes up, because I've had, growing up, I used to talk to people that would say, you know what, you shouldn't get into philosophy because the Bible condemns philosophy. We should only be focused on the Bible and this and that. And a lot of times, these kinds of comments made by professing Christians are comments that indicate that they don't understand the meaning of the words that they're using. Why do I say that? Well, because the word wisdom in the Greek language is the word Sophia. And the word philosophy comes from the Greek words phileo or philos. I can't remember. It's philos. I think I'm going to get the definition here. But uh, philosophy, the term philosophy is composed of two Greek words, philos, love, and sophia, wisdom. The philosophy of man is foolishness. So what we are hearing here is that based on the meaning of the word philosophy, we're basically saying philosophy is the love of wisdom. Now, since God is one of the attributes of God is that he is wise, then we must understand that wisdom is a good thing. Sophia is a good thing. But you have the wisdom that comes from God, and then there's the wisdom that comes from man or the world or the devil or whatever you coming from on that area. So here's where you have so from the biblical point of view, the wisdom of man or the philosophy of man, the love of wisdom of man, is actually something that is foolishness and is to be rejected. Not entirely, not everything that man says is wrong, but one of the things that we believe as Christians is that all truth is God's truth. And I actually have a Sunday school that I'm going to make public very soon, where I actually cover this particular subject. So, in other words, whenever mankind says something that is absolutely true, they're saying what they're saying is true because it's God's truth, because God is the creator. Man doesn't create his own truth. We understand God is the foundation for all knowledge and truth and all of these things. And so for the wisdom. So whenever we get it right, we're getting it from God, not because an angel came down or because a prophet came over and he told them, okay, this is the information. Sometimes through general revelation, which we've covered in the Sunday schools, through the very fact that God has created the universe, God leaves us with information that we can deduce. The problem is that man is depraved in his sinful mind and in his heart. And because of that, we can't really put together all this information and get a cohesive understanding of how reality is outside of getting the necessary information, which is the divine revelation that comes from God, and this is divine wisdom. So let's look at some of these scriptures. Colossians 2:8. See to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deception, according to the tradition of men, according to the elementary principles of the world, and not according to Christ. So notice how Paul, in his letter to the Colossians, contrasts these elementary principles that come from the traditions and philosophies of men versus getting our information, our revelation, our wisdom coming from God Himself through His agents, whether it be angels or prophets, apostles, or Jesus Christ Himself. Job 28, verses 12 and 13. Job 28:12 and 13. But where can wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? Man does not know its worth, and it is not found in the land of the living. So, in other words, wisdom in its truest form cannot be found among men. There will always be different opinions, and someone is wrong. I mean, unless you're a postmodernist and thinks that everybody has their own truth, or no one's really wrong, or some derivative of that kind of spectrum of ideas. From the biblical point of view, you are either right or you are wrong. And when it comes to the philosophy of men, now we've got to understand. I mentioned what philosophy is. Philosophy is the study of it's the love of wisdom, but specifically you're studying these different branches of knowledge. You have the theory of knowledge, which is known as epistemology. You have the study of reality, which is known as metaphysics. You have aesthetics, which is the study of beauty. And so let's look, for example, at metaphysics. Well, that's the study of reality. Some people have said, the Bible has nothing to do with philosophy, or that Christianity or religion has nothing to do with philosophy. The Bible begins with the phrase, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The Bible begins with a statement about reality. Now, now if you're someone who's not a Christian and you're watching this video and you're thinking, oh, but that's what you Christians believe. That's not really science. That's not really intellectualism. That's just fairy tales. That's just whatever. That's your prerogative. We live in a world where you have the right to believe whatever you want. But the point is that the biblical statement is philosophical in nature, whether you think it's foolish or not. From the Christian perspective, we believe we're getting revelation from God, and this revelation is making a metaphysical statement. It's a statement about reality. It tells us in the beginning. That means that there is something called time. And it says God. That means there's something called God that exists. And then it says God created the heavens and the earth. So we have this idea that the heavens and the earth not only are exist, they don't just exist because some people say that all reality is an illusion and this and that's fine. But the biblical revelation is that the heavens and the earth, the universe, is not an illusion. It's a very real thing. It does exist, and it exists because it was created by God. So if you begin as a Christian, if you begin with the principle that God has actually spoken, we can understand from Scripture that our metaphysics begins with the phrase, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, the other philosophies of the world, whether you're talking about atheism or deism or pantheism or any other isms that you can think of, they have their place in court. If you want to have that intellectual philosophy that you want to bring to the table and say, this is where I'm coming from, you know, good for you if you want to have those principles. But the Christian position has an alternative view. And many of intellectuals have engaged. So if you look at the history of Judaism, Judaism has their own intellectual philosophers, whether it be Maimonides or I forget the name of the other gentleman who's very, very famous, but just mental lapse because I didn't have it on my notes. But you also have in the Christian tradition, you have people like the church fathers, whether it be Augustine or Jerome. And then, of course, in the Middle Ages, you have even Thomas Aquinas. I mean, there's a lot that we can say that we can agree with Thomas Aquinas, other things that we could say that we disagree. And then you have the reformers. You have people like Martin Luther and Calvin and Knox and Jonathan Edwards later on during the First Great Awakening. So we have many intellectual philosophers who have made arguments for the existence of God and for the truthfulness of Christianity. So there's a richness to this, but the point is that if you want to be a biblical Christian, you're supposed to adopt a philosophy, a love of wisdom, a theory of knowledge, epistemology, all of that that begins with God as its ultimate revealer, because all truth comes from God. But we're going to get to that in the Sunday school that I covered on that subject. So let's talk about wisdom is from God. 1 Kings 3:28. Then all Israel heard of the judgment which the king had handed down, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. So here you have the king, who is everyone's listening very carefully to what we have, because they know that the wisdom that they have comes from God. That's the ultimate statement about God being the origin of this wisdom. Daniel 2:20. Daniel answered and said, let the name of God be blessed forever and ever, for wisdom and might belong to God. Notice those words. Whether you're a Christian, in other words, if you're not a Christian, I know you're going to disagree. That's okay if you disagree. You know, we invite you to explore these issues by going to a Christian church or speaking to a theologian, or if you decide to pick up a book or listen to a debate. There's lots of good Christian debates on YouTube that you can listen to. But even if you disagree with it, you should at least compartmentalize this fact. Christianity is actually telling us that wisdom and might belong to God, that God is the one who wisdom belongs to. And that is a philosophical claim, whether you disagree with it, but at least understand that this is the Christian perspective. This is what the Bible is revealing to us. Okay, Job 12:13. With him, referring to God, are wisdom and might. To him belong counsel and discernment. Same statement once again, that all of these things, wisdom, discernment, knowledge, everything that you can think of, belongs to God. Why? Because from the Christian perspective, he is the creator. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Romans 16:27. To the only wise God, through Jesus Christ, be the glory forever. Amen. 1 Corinthians 1:18 through 25. Now, this is actually a very important section from a Christian perspective, because there's a lot of Christians that, for whatever reason, they get hung up way too much on a lot of these secular philosophers. They want to be in tune with every single thing. And that's not necessarily bad. In other words, it's not bad to read philosophical journals or philosophical books or be up to date. But it's bad if you go too far, or if it takes prominence from the Christian perspective. From the worldly perspective, it doesn't matter. But from the Christian perspective, if that takes prominence, over your time studying and learning the Word of God, listening to sermons, attending church, going to the means of grace, being in prayer, if that takes prominence over that, this is a problem. So listen to how Paul contrasts the wisdom that comes from God, the divine revelation, the divine wisdom from God, and the philosophia, the love of wisdom that comes from men. And notice how he contrasts this, because you have the Greek philosophers, this is what he's going to talk about, and the Jewish leaders of the first century. Listen carefully to what he says. For the word of the cross, this is the gospel, is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us, that's the Christians, who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise. This is the philosophy of those who are not God's people. The wisdom of the wise and the cleverness of the clever I will set aside. Where is the wise man? These are the philosophers now, okay? Where is the wise man? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? This, remember, in the Greek, this is in English, these are two different words. You have wisdom and you have philosophy. And you're not going to see the connection if you're just reading them in English. But in Greek, it says Sophia, and the philosophy is philosophia. So the difference is philosophia and Sophia. And so when it refers to Sophia in this passage, it's referring to the philosophies of men. But when it talks about the Sophia of God, it's talking about the philosophies of God, of divine revelation. God has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not come to know God, God was pleased through the foolishness of the message preached to save those who believe. For indeed Jews ask for signs, and Greeks search for wisdom. But we preach Christ crucified, to Jews a stumbling block, and to Gentiles foolishness. But to those who are the called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God, because the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. He's speaking figuratively. There's no such thing as a weakness in God. There's no such thing as foolishness of God. But what Paul is contrasting is that the biblical revelation, the revelation of God, for the unbeliever, it is foolishness. It's nonsense. If you listen to some of the major atheistic people like Christopher Hitchens, who passed away, Richard Dawkins, or Sam Harris, a lot of these people, they will look to the Bible and say, well, that's just a bunch of primitive material by people that didn't know what we know about science and medicine and this and that. And so for them, the Christian message may sound silly, and to them, the atheistic perspective, or if you're a deist or if you're some other philosophy, that sounds more enlightened. That sounds more like, okay, now we got our head on straight. But from the Christian perspective, we must ask the question, which world do we live in? Do we live in the world that was created by Yahweh, or do we live in a different world? If God really is, if Yahweh, the God of the Bible, is the God who created the heavens and the earth, then we live in his universe and we must think his thoughts after him. That's why we have to ask the big questions. But the non-believing worldview has a different perspective, and hence everything that comes out of the biblical revelation is silly, it is foolish, or you can use a lot more colorful language in order to express their distaste for the Christian faith and for the very statements of God. Because what is Christianity saying? Christianity is saying is that there's this righteous and holy God, and this righteous and holy God is going to present his judgment upon sinful humanity. So for the unbeliever, they're saying, how dare these religious people, because they don't believe that God really did this. They believe it's primitive man who wrote these books, passing himself off as God, saying these things, and we need to outgrow or evolve beyond these kinds of claims that are made by the Bible. So from the Christian perspective, we must respond by saying, we live in God's world. He's the creator, and we need to think the way that he has revealed to us that we should think. And so as Christians, we must understand we should never think that Christianity should be intellectually satisfying to the unbeliever, because Here in 1 Corinthians 1, it explicitly states that by definition, Christianity is supposed to be nonsense. All we have to do is show them, as Christians, we have to show them that their views are not consistent with the reality that their very experience. This is what we get into evangelism and apologetics and stuff like that. But this is all together in when you're having this discussion about the attributes of God. One of the things that we will notice in Christianity is that when you're in witnessing situations, or maybe you're with among Christians, but one of the Christians may be having a faith crisis, and they're asking questions like, but if God is this, then why that? Or some variation of these kinds of things. Or why, if I've been serving God for all these years, why are all these things happening to me? And you can present yourself as a victim. If you have a proper understanding of the nature, attributes of God, the revelation of God, both in creation and through his prophets and the scriptures and everything that we can put forth there, a lot of those answers, a lot of those questions will be answered. But we have to submit ourselves to the lordship of God. That's where the true revelation is, because then you could be like Job, who is complaining to God and God has to silence his mouth. But that's the difficulty. We need to have an accurate picture. And a lot of times when I've had conversations with people that are unbelievers, well, why this and why that? If they just understood the attributes of God, if they just understood what the Bible says about the gospel and about judgment and the fall and sin, a lot of these questions are answered. But even if you answer them, they still won't believe, because they're not honestly seeking a reason why Christianity is true. They're looking for reasons to not believe in Christianity. And this is what Paul talks about in Romans 1 when he says that they are suppressing the truth in unrighteousness. Colossians 2:3, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. This is referring to Christ. All the treasures of wisdom, all the hidden, all of the treasures of wisdom are hidden in Christ, because Christ is the foundation of all of this. Romans 5:12, saying with a loud voice, worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing. So you see these things, they're being showered upon Christ. And wisdom is one of those things. And in fact, Jesus is actually referred to as the wisdom in that passage in 1 Corinthians. God gives us divine wisdom. Proverbs 2:6, for Yahweh gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and discernment. So here you have this example that when Yahweh is giving blessings to people, he gives them knowledge and discernment. And this helps them to have serenity of mind, especially in times of crisis. You know, you've had situations where maybe you're in some sort of cataclysmic situation. Maybe your world is shaking for either economic reason, or maybe there's a natural disaster. And it is the person who has wisdom and discernment and has the serenity of mind who can help those people journey past the difficulties that they're going through at that moment. Uh, Ecclesiastes 2:26, for to a man who is good before him, he has given wisdom and knowledge and gladness, while to the sinner he has given the endeavor of gathering and collecting, so that he may give to one who is good before God. This too is vanity and striving after wind. So you see this, that from the man's perspective, you can't attain what belongs to God and God alone. Finally, James 1:5. But if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him. Now, let me make one brief comment here before I end this particular Sunday school. And I'm a little bit hot right now. The temperature is kind of hot. But anyway, one of the issues with James 1:5, and I don't have an issue with James 1:5, but when you get into encounters with people like members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there's a passage in the book of the Book of Mormon, which talks about how if you want to know if these things are true, you should pray about it in order to see if these are true or false. And then God is supposed to give you some sort of revelation, whether it be mystical or some other kind of thing. And as a result of this prayer, you're supposed to get your answer. And so a lot of Mormons or members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or LDS, they get this testimony that tells them that the book is true or that their church is the true church and all of that. And, we live in a free country, so they have the right to do those things. But one of the verses that they use in order to justify that claim is in James chapter 1, verse 5. Briefly speaking, if you look at James chapter 1, verse 5, he's talking to Christians who are dealing with very difficult circumstances. He is talking to people in churches who, whether they're handling persecution or enduring some sort of trial, and he's saying, and it is when you're having those kinds of trials, as I mentioned earlier, a few moments ago, I was talking about how in times of trial, it is there that you need to have that wisdom, that discernment, to know which direction to go when you have a set of options. And it is God who ultimately is the giver of that wisdom, and which is what we've just talked about in this Sunday school, that God is wise and God is the one that gives the wisdom. So as Christians, in every decision that we make, of course we are to pray to God. If you're going to get a new job, or if you're thinking about quitting a job, getting a new job, or perhaps you're considering pursuing, if you're a man, maybe you're pursuing a woman as a potential wife, or maybe you're a woman who is considering a suitor who is approaching her for courtship, or maybe you're talking about maybe moving to a new house, or maybe you're talking about getting a new job somewhere else. It can be a number. Maybe you're thinking about going to a different church. Maybe you're struggling. You're having maybe a bit of a faith crisis, and you're attending a Calvary chapel, and some things aren't adding up for you, and you decide to go to a Presbyterian church or a Lutheran church or a Reformed Baptist church. Or it could be the other way. Maybe you are a Reformed Baptist and you end up going to a Calvary Chapel. I want to be respectful here. Obviously, I'm a Reformed Baptist. Have my disagreements with Calvary Chapel, but they are my brothers in the Lord, and I respect them for that. But what I'm explaining is, when you're going from one to another, when you're experiencing these difficulties, where you need to make a big decision in your life, you should pray for guidance, and then you go to the means that God gives you. You go to the scriptures, you speak with your pastor, you speak with a close friend, someone in the church, and you try to gather as much as information, and you make choices based on that. James 1:5 is not talking about whether or not you are to pray to see if a book is revealed from God, as if from a prophet, or if a church is true. God never speaks that way. And the only places where we have references to the test of a prophet are places in, for example, in Deuteronomy 13, where God gives us a test of a prophet. Deuteronomy 18, you have John talking about to a lesser degree. First John 4 talks about those who are false prophets, and he talks about how you can't contradict the previous revelation. So you have these things, but we should not misunderstand. We don't just ask God to tell us, oh God, should I take this job or not? No, you should pray to God and ask for his guidance in any decision that you're making. But don't expect an angel to come down. Don't expect a dream to come over and tell you you should do this, or this book is true. That would be a misreading of the text. With all due respect, with our Latter-day Saint friends, I do think that I needed to discuss that, because the passage is talking about wisdom, and I think it is misused by the Latter-day Saints, and I believe it was misused by Joseph Smith, their prophet. So, but as we end this particular Sunday school, I hope that this is helpful, and I'm sorry for the delay, but I've had a lot of things go on. I had a recent death in the family, and I'm trying to continue on with this, and I hope that I can make time, and I am able to start doing with regularity some Sunday school, not Sunday school, but Bible studies in Spanish on the other YouTube channel, La Zona Teologica, and I'm going to try to start up the shows that I did on Christian thought in our world. As of right now, I'm doing this by myself, because with the loss of Brother Eric, I'm speaking now about Christian thought in our world. Uh, with the loss of Brother Eric and Brother James being on a sabbatical from the show, I'm going to have to do this on myself. I don't get paid to do this. This is just me using a phone, and I try to use my devices to the best of my ability, and I hope that this can be helpful. Maybe this YouTube channel isn't for you, but maybe it is. Maybe you'll find that this is a welcoming place where you can have these kinds of discussions. If you want to make a comment in the comment section, and if you want to ask a question or be pointed in the direction of someone that can, we can try to help you as I'm a member of Acts Reformed Church. And so I thank you very much for those of you that watch this video, and I hope that it has been helpful to have a biblical understanding of Sophia, of the very wisdom of God, because God is wise. God bless.